Right now, the number one issue in Western countries, in Canada, in the United States, in Australia, in New Zealand, and in Western Europe, the number one issue in these countries is uncontrolled both legal and illegal immigration, okay? It has gone completely out of hand, putting an enormous strain on our housing market. Right now, Canada has the worst housing crisis amongst all OECD countries, and it will be impossible to turn these numbers around. Okay, the future of Canada is doomed. It's the same thing in the UK, for example. In just the past 2 years, since the COVID restrictions has ended, okay, UK's population increased by 2.5 million. I mentioned before, European countries, they have some of the lowest fertility rates on earth, right? Why is the population increasing so fast? Immigration, both legal and illegal. For example, just the past year, the UK accepted 600,000 immigrants into the country legally. But so 600,000 multiplied by 2, that's still only 1.2 million, okay? Where did the other 1.3 million come from? Migrants, okay? That's what you guys want to call them. That's what the left-wing politicians want to call them. But those people are illegal aliens, and every single one of them needs to be deported ASAP by the millions, okay? Right now, the official number from the British government is that one migrant or illegal alien is arriving to the UK, one per minute, okay? That is actually the official figure. You can look that up. That is 1,440 per day. That is over 500,000 per year. That is 1 million migrants, either legal or illegal, that has come into the UK in just the past 2 years. That's where you got those 2.5 million. Right now, the UK's population is nearing 70 million. Keep in mind, the entirety of the United Kingdom, it's smaller than the country of New Zealand. That is an actual fact. You can look that up, right? So UK is smaller than New Zealand. UK has almost 70 million people now. New Zealand has 5 million people, okay? This is going to put an enormous strain on the housing market and the economy. No country can handle this level of an increase in the population, okay? This is a massive crisis. The borders needs to be completely closed. It needs to be completely shut down. These government policies, they're completely destroying the lives of everybody that's living in these Western countries. And obviously for now, white people are still the majority of Canada. They're still the majority in the UK and France and Italy and Germany. They're still the majority in the United States, although soon that won't be the case. So the people who are going to be really reeling from these radical immigration policies are white people who are living in these countries. They're going to really feel the pinch. And I'm going to explain to you guys why. And I believe the number one problem right now is the number of Chinese immigrants that's coming to these Western countries, okay? Because they're completely destroying the property market. This is one of the key issues that's facing white people. For example, back in 1960, right, if almost everybody could afford to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, and obviously you will see way more family units. You will see a lot of young men marrying young women because it's the same situation worldwide, okay? If young couples cannot purchase a home, they're less likely to want to have children. That is a 100% fact. It's the exact same thing in China, South Korea, and Japan. Because due to the fact that these young people, they cannot afford to purchase homes. So it is a major contributing factor to the reason why these people, they do not want to have children. Because think about it, right? Only if you are working an average income job, let's say you make $50,000 a year in New York City, and let's say you have a girlfriend that's making $40,000 a year, okay? So the best you can do with both of your salaries combined is to rent a tiny little either bachelor or 1-bedroom apartment. How are you supposed to raise 2 or 3 children in a tiny studio or 1-bedroom apartment? When young people cannot afford to buy homes, okay, they will not want to raise children. And here you have basically the collapse of the birth rate. Okay, this is a vicious cycle because a society simply cannot maintain itself when all the young people stop having children. If you want to rescue a society, the number one priority on your list is that you need to change the housing affordability for young people. Young people must have the ability to be able to buy new homes, or the country is going to enter an era of a dystopian nightmare. And why do I say that Chinese immigrants, they're actually the number one issue? I'll give you guys a great example, the city of Vancouver. You can look up the consumer price index in Vancouver. It's not just the most expensive housing market in the world. If you don't believe me, book a flight to Vancouver. I'm serious. Go to a bar, order a glass of beer. That's gonna be $15, okay? Go to McDonald's, get a Big Mac meal. That's gonna cost you $20. Go to a KFC, order a family bucket. That's gonna be $60, okay? I don't know how the hell people can afford to survive in that city. It has gotten so outrageously expensive. By the way, in the Metro Vancouver area, what's the total population? Perhaps 2.5 million. I would say probably over 60% of the population are immigrants, and I would say anywhere between 30 to 40% of the Metro Vancouver's area's population is probably ethnic Chinese. It was taken over by ethnic Chinese people during the 1980s and 1990s. So here's what happened to the city of Vancouver. So back in the 1980s and the 1990s, okay, if you look at the Statistics Canada, the official population census, back in 1981, city of Vancouver was still 93% white. Native Americans made up 2% of the population. Immigrants only made up 5%, okay? And as I'm making this video right now in 2024, I would say the white population in the Metro Vancouver area is probably anywhere between 35 to 40%, okay? Has been completely taken over by the immigrants, mostly people from southern China and also from Hong Kong. So remember, back in 1997, okay? So the British, they actually signed a lease on the island of Hong Kong, okay, for 99 years. This is going back to the first and the second Opium War. I will come back to these topics for videos much later down the road, after I finish filming my series from China. So a lot of people from these regions, from southern China, from Hong Kong, they were extremely concerned about the policies of the Chinese Communist Party. So what happened during this time period, during the 1980s and leading up to 1997, okay? So all of the people who were in the top 1, 2, 3% of income earners in southern China and in Hong Kong, every single one of them basically fled those areas, okay? And one of the most popular destinations for these people for some reason is the city of Vancouver. Could be due to the beautiful mountains in BC, could be the tropical weather, but this was the #1 destination. So what you saw back in the 1980s, for example, is that so these people, they will book a flight to Vancouver, and right away they will book a tour with a scheduled tour bus. So sometimes you will see basically these Chinese tour buses carrying 40, 50 of these filthy rich Chinese people, and they will go into Vancouver's these new development areas. They're building new homes, and they will literally hop off the bus and they will talk to a realtor. And they'll say, okay, so this new home is being built within the next 6 months. Okay, I will buy it cash. Okay. And there's another home that's being built just around the corner in another 3 months. Okay, I'll buy another home and I'll pay you everything cash. This probably went on in the city of Vancouver for 15 to 20 years. Busloads and busloads of Chinese immigrants, and they flooded to the Vancouver area for nearly 15 to 20 years. They bought every single property that was available, and this completely destroyed the housing market for the Metro Vancouver region. And the dramatic spike with these Chinese immigrants that's coming in, obviously this caused a major housing shortage in the area, because this is all about price elasticity. It's about supply and demand. Let's say if you have 1 million people in the city and there are 10 million homes, okay, that means that the homes are going to be worth nothing. You can buy a house for $10,000, $20,000 because it's everywhere. However, if you have 1 million people in the city and there's only 100,000 homes, that means that every home is going to be worth a piece of gold. They're all going to be $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million. It's because during the 1980s and 1990s, the Vancouver metropolitan area had a massive population explosion due to immigrants mostly from China. So many of the poor white people, they simply cannot afford to buy a home in the Vancouver area anymore. Okay, they've been working hard all of their lives just to save up for a down payment. All that for Chinese immigrants to come in to just buy a home with cash to completely price them out of the property market. So many of these poor white people, they have to move to other places in BC. For example, they're moving to places like Chilliwack. They're moving to places like Kamloops. They're moving to places like Maple Ridge, British Columbia. And trust me, if you go to Maple Ridge, British Columbia, you will see a lot of poor white folks. In fact, if you still go to the city of Vancouver, right, there's still white people left in the city, probably 30 to 40%, right? Go to downtown, go to Stanley Park, okay? You will see thousands of homeless white people camped out onto the streets, sleeping in tents all year round because they can't even afford to rent a 1-bedroom apartment or even a studio apartment because the housing market has completely crashed. Any below average, mediocre looking home in Vancouver will easily cost you $1.5 million, okay? I'm not making this up. I want to bring all the points full circle, okay? I want to talk about China's property market as well, okay? I don't know what you heard about China's land. It's basically, if you choose to buy a home in China, it's a 50-year lease or 70-year lease or 99-year lease. don't believe the lies, okay? Everything you have been told by Western media, it's propaganda. It's all lies. Everything you've been told about North and South Korea, about Russia and Ukraine, about the Middle East, it's all 100% propaganda. In China, if you buy a home cash, or if you're able to basically get a 25-year mortgage, after you pay off your mortgage, you own your home, okay? You do not pay any form of property tax. It is yours. However, yes, there's one catch. So in China, typically it's not a house. Typically it's a condo, typically anywhere between 15 to 30 stories, right? Let's say if you purchased a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit, okay, on the 10th floor of this condo, yes, you owned that unit. Okay, you own that property. However, you do not own the rights to the land. So the Chinese government and the Chinese developers, let's say 20 years after you purchase your condo, if they want to demolish that building and build something else in its place, they have every right to do so. You will be forced to relocate for a cash payment. Okay, so this is called 动迁 in China. This is extremely important. Okay, if you're wondering why, right? How can all of these Chinese immigrants, how can they have so much money back in the 1980s and 1990s? How can they just fly over to Vancouver and just buy a brand new home cash? Okay, we're getting all of this money. In fact, many Chinese immigrants, they're still doing this. They're just basically, they're landing in Canada, they're landing in the United States, and they can just straight up buy a home cash. How are they doing this? Okay, they're able to do this because of China's property laws, because of the 动迁 process. Because when you have an old home in China and that is about to be demolished, okay, you're paid a huge ransom of money. Listen very careful to this part, okay? So here comes the ultimate plot twist. Back in the 1970s, throughout the 80s and 1990s in China, the Chinese Communist Party used to give Chinese citizens free housing, free food, free education, and free healthcare. 100% provided free, given certain conditions, okay? Listen, in the West and in the East, okay? I don't care what the hell you say. The baby boomers, the Gen X, they had the greatest wealth transfer in the history of humanity. They all had life on the easy mode. They completely this world into a coma. They have destroyed our society, both in the East and the West, okay? They're the ones who pushed third wave feminism. They're the ones who led to this 50% plus divorce rate. Okay, they're the reason why right now in America, 24 million children are being raised by single mothers. The baby boomers and Gen X are 100% responsible for the fall of the nuclear family. What do I mean by that? The Chinese Communist Party used to give Chinese people free housing, okay? I'll give you an example. So, 1976, Chairman Mao Zedong passes away. This is when communism ends in China. Comrade Deng Xiaoping, even though he wasn't appointed by Chairman Mao Zedong to be the next leader of China, he was able to maneuver his way around the other candidates. He was quite slick. And in 1978, Comrade Deng Xiaoping implemented a policy. It's called 改革开放. This roughly translates to basically China opening up to the rest of the world. He's saying that communism and socialism just simply cannot work. Look at what happened during the Great Leap Forward. Look at the 100 Flower Campaign, the anti-rightist movement, the Cultural Revolution, okay, the death to the bourgeois. So Comrade Deng Xiaoping basically said that China is going to become a free market capitalist society, okay? And how is China going to rescue its economy? Remember, China spent the vast majority of the 20th century as one of the poorest nations on earth in terms of GDP per capita. Comrade Deng Xiaoping had this plan. So during the Cultural Revolution, all the teachers, all the principals, they were 100% sacked. All the schools closed, okay? So China had a severe shortage of skilled workers. So China put a program in place. Basically, anybody that wanted to learn a skill, anybody that wanted to earn certification can come back to school as an adult, and the education will be provided 100% free. You will have a free meal plan. You will have your housing provided to you 100% free. Do you know how I know this? Because after my mom's first divorce, she came back to adult school. That's where she got her certificate to become an accountant at this hydro company in northeastern China. So back in the 1980s, during this time period, due to the lack of skilled workers in China, okay, China was so desperate to bring people back to school. So my mama went back to adult school for roughly 2 years. Before that, she didn't have any education. That's not her fault, obviously. During the Cultural Revolution, all the schools shut down. During those 2 years, Okay, her tuition, books, everything was paid for. Her housing was paid for. Her food was paid for. She studied hard for 2 years and she got herself a certificate to become an accountant. Okay, and back then, as long as you wanted to learn, everybody could come back to school. And as long as you wanted to learn, you were guaranteed a job. I'll give you an example. She never ever had to apply for a job. For example, if you finish your study to be an accountant, they give you a certificate on Tuesday afternoon. They'll say Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Okay, here's your employee card. Go punch into your workplace. Okay, you're hired the next day with full benefit, with full pension. And I want to make something clear. Those people, my mom back in the day, they never worked the 996. Okay, that's only for poor broke ass people. Yes, if you apply to wash dishes at some bullshit restaurant, if you apply to be a waitress at McDonald's, unfortunately, you're going to be making shitty money. Unfortunately, you will have to be working the 996. That's a 72-hour work week. In fact, sometimes you will have to work 84 hours. However, if you had a skill, if you had that piece of paper, your typical work hour was Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. You have a half hour to 1 hour lunch break. You also have a 15-minute break in the morning and 15-minute break in the afternoon. You get to sit around in a fancy chair with wheels at the bottom. You can spin around in your chairs all day. I know this because my mom, my aunts, my dad, my uncles, they all went through the same process, okay? My dad will also go on to work at the same hydro company in northeastern China. This is back in the 1980s and 1990s. This was a peak of China's economic boom in the northeast, okay? It used to be the financial capital of China. That is no longer the case. But at the peak, this hydro company had 300,000 employees. 300,000 employees. You want to know something crazy? Almost every single one of these employees, certainly the ones that's in a management level position or anybody that was a skilled worker, right? Every one of them, none of them had to pay for their homes. It was all given to them 100% free by the Chinese Communist Party. Because my dad, he had a higher level of position, so he was given a 4-bedroom and 2 living room condo. It was roughly 150 square meters or over 1,600 square feet. It was given to him for free. He was one of the first people in China to have a cell phone. They used to be those big, black, like massive bricks, okay? Almost nobody in the early 1990s had a cell phone. It was the first generation of cell phones that came to China. That was given to him for free. Back then, anybody that had a cell phone was somebody. You were a real deal. You were a real gangster. You were a top G if you had a cell phone. He was given a brand new pickup, okay? All for free by the hydro company. My mom, so her position was slightly lower than my dad. So she was giving two-bedroom units. So they were side by side, separated by a wall in the middle, right next to each other. So the combined area was just over 90 square meters or 1,000 square feet. She got that from the hydro company for free. And her job came with full benefits, okay? Remember, China does not have universal healthcare. Unfortunately, when poor people, when they get sick, oftentimes they don't have money to go to the hospital. They will be forced to die at home. So my mom's job came with 100% medical benefits, okay? So every time she goes to the hospital for a checkup, she doesn't have to pay for anything. I mentioned before, my dad, he's the youngest siblings in his family. He has 4 older brothers. They all had the exact same benefit, okay? They were all employed by the hydro company. All of them had either a 3 or 4-bedroom apartment given to them for free, okay? They did not have to pay anything. This was very common during the early years of 改革开放, during China's opening up under Deng Xiaoping. Okay, many Chinese people got these benefits. This was only possible if you're a baby boomer or Gen X. Obviously, China no longer does this. I want to make something clear. Okay, no company in China will give you these kind of benefits anymore. So one of my uncles, so he's 2 years older than my dad. He just recently retired. I believe he worked all the way until he was maybe 62 or 63. Okay, the hydro company they worked for, on top of the free houses and the free cars you get. So every time someone retires, you receive a one-time special payment for working at this hydro company. This is my 4th uncle, who is 2 years older than my dad. He was given a one-time cash payment of over 800,000 yuan just to celebrate his retirement. So over 800,000 yuan, that is roughly $120,000 to $130,000 US. That was given to him cash, no tax deducted. So back in the day, okay, don't bullshit me about all that stuff. People keep saying that, oh, people had it so difficult. Listen, all those older Chinese people, they had life on easy mode. As long as you're willing to learn something, as long as you're willing to go back to school, just like my mom, she did not have to pay for anything. The Chinese Communist Party, they give my mom a place to sleep. They give her free food. They offer her free education. It only took her 2 years to become accountant. And once she became accountant, she never had to went through job search. Okay, the Chinese Communist Party assigned her that job position at the hydro company where she got the 100% full health care. And she got two-bedroom apartments that was given to her for free. She did not have to pay a single penny. And that is how so many middle-aged Chinese people, how they got so wealthy. How was China able to do this? How can they, build so many houses and give it out to these people for free, right? Well, there are many reasons for this. For example, if you're giving out millions of these homes for free, okay, all these homes, obviously, they require construction. So China will have to hire millions of people. So this adds millions of new people into the workforce. People who are doing manual labor. You need bricklayers. You need people to be laying the roof tiles. You need electricians. You need plumbers. And these kind of plants inject tens of millions of jobs into the Chinese economy. And obviously, when these people work, they will have to pay taxes. And this increases China's GDP. Just imagine this. Okay, healthcare aside, the free food aside, the cell phone aside, the pickups aside. Imagine this, if you're living in Canada or America as a young couple, okay? If you had a house that was given to you 100% free, you don't have to pay any taxes, you don't have to pay any property tax. And imagine, you could live life on the easy mode. Okay, you don't have to make a lot of money. Okay, the husband can make $50,000 a year. Okay, the wife can make $35,000 or $40,000 a year. But if you had a house that was paid for free, you can live an amazing life. Sure, back then, my mama's accountant, she probably made a bullshit salary. She was probably making like $10 or $20 a month. My dad, maybe $30 or $40 a month. But the key point was, right, they didn't have to pay for anything. The pickup that was given to my dad, the insurance was covered by the hydro company. The gas was covered by the hydro company. And if he got into a fender bender, that was covered by the hydro company. He did not have to pay for anything. So this is why so many Chinese immigrants, they come to Canada or the United States, they can buy home cash. This is why they have so much money. Because right now, Canada, there's a record housing crisis. Anybody that owns a home, I'm talking about, your mortgage has been paid off, or if you're blessed enough to inherit it from your parents, okay? Or if you won a couple $1,000,000 at a casino or on the lottery, you can buy a home for cash, okay? That means you're going to be extremely wealthy, okay? If you own a home cash with no debt, that means you're probably in the top 1 or 2% of Canadians in terms of financial stability, okay? Right now, if you don't have a home, if you're forced to rent, you're 100% screwed. So back when my dad was about to leave China, okay, he sold his 150 square meter condo in China. I don't know how much he sold it for exactly. Obviously, he also sold his pickup. So then he moved to Canada, and a couple years later, he bought a home in Canada for cash for $160,000 Canadian. That was back in 2005. I know that price sounds absolutely insane now. Under Justin Trudeau's policy and his radical immigration policy has completely destroyed the housing market in Canada. That's why everything was so expensive. Basically, the 150 square meter condo that my dad had in China that was given to him for free by the Chinese Communist Party, and also the pickup, okay, those two combined was just enough money for roughly $160,000 Canadian or 120,000 US. So with that money, he came to Canada and he bought a house for cash. That's how so many Chinese people are able to do this, because a house is generational wealth. And I don't care what you say, I don't care how much you want to bash the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, they don't do this anymore. But from 1978 all the way until the 1980s into the 1990s, many Chinese people, if they wanted to work hard, if they wanted to come back to school, you can get yourself a house for free. And yes, some people can say that, maybe a family is an exception, okay? They were lucky enough to be assigned to a job at this powerhouse hydro company. What about the people who are less fortunate, right? What about the people who owns a mama and papa shop? Maybe they just own a tiny little convenience store, okay? Maybe they work the 996, okay? Back in the day, remember, at the end of the Cultural Revolution, China was one of the poorest nations on earth. So the properties were extremely cheap in China. Okay, if you had two people that was working 996, 72 hours a week, let's say in Beijing, right, at the start of China's opening up, okay, let's say if you worked extremely hard for the next 3, 4, 5 years between two people, you will be able to save up enough money for a down payment to buy a 3-bedroom condo in Beijing. Let's say you did this from 1978 to 1981. If you bought a 3-bedroom condo, let's say in the heart of Beijing, right? Back in 1981, that probably costed like anywhere between $8,000 to $10,000 US, because China was extremely poor, okay? The houses costed almost nothing. So let's say back in 1981, this hardworking Chinese couple, they bought their 3-bedroom unit for $10,000 US. Okay, let's just round it up to make it simple. What happened in China in 2001? China won the bid to host the Summer Olympics in 2008. This is when China's economic miracle really took off in the early 2000s, okay? And what did the Chinese government officials do? They want to completely modernize and revive the city. They want to make it look as modern and as gorgeous as possible to attract the foreigners, to show the perfect image of China when all the people from over 200 countries around the world, when they come over to celebrate the 2008 Summer Olympic Games. Obviously, massive property development projects were put into place. So treating China as a massive project in order to modernize and revamp their city, to turn Beijing into a future metropolis, obviously the housing prices skyrocketed, and any old homes in China will have to go. This is the important thing I want to distinguish. Yes, you do own your 3-bedroom apartment. However, you do not own the rights to that land. So when the Chinese developers came in, they said that we're going to tear up your own home. We're going to build a brand new 40-story condo over here. So your old home that you purchased in 1981 for $10,000 US, okay, that now has to get demolished. But you see, Chinese people are actually thrilled every time their own home gets demolished, because what happens is when this dongqian happens, okay, the family that resided in the home, you get a massive cash payment. So the developers come in, they evaluate your home, and they say that your home is worth this much. So here's the money. We're gonna tear up your home, and you can spend this money and relocate somewhere else. So a house, let's say, that was worth $10,000 in Beijing in 1981, all of a sudden in 2001, in the heart of Beijing, you're looking at least 1 million or even 2 million US dollars, okay? This is how fast China's property market took off between the 1980s to 1990s to the early 2000s. So imagine, you're a broke-ass couple that, you worked hard for 3 or 4 years to save up for a down payment, to pay for your dream home for $10,000. 20 years later, the Chinese developers come in and they say that your home is now worth $1 million or $2 million. Yeah. Now you've struck gold. You can easily move to Canada or the United States and you can buy a home cash. That's how these Chinese immigrants are doing it. It's not because China is paying them record insane wages. Because let's say right now in modern day in 2024, the average wage in the city of Beijing is probably no higher than 15,000 yuan a month, which is just over $2,000 US a month, okay? The wages are not keeping up with the inflation. It's these properties that's making these Chinese people wealthy, the older Chinese people that is. And by the way, many Chinese people are still doing this in USA and Canada, okay? I personally know and work with quite a few of these, rich older Chinese people that got rich during China's property boom, okay? So right now, Canada has a record housing shortage, right? Why doesn't the government step in and stop these rich Chinese people from doing this? Because what they're doing is that they will completely wreck Canada's housing crisis even further, right? Well, here's the thing. Here's the catch. Right now, do you know what's the fastest way to get a green card in Canada legally? So what you do is that you can book a flight to anywhere. You can fly to Toronto, you can fly to Ottawa, you can fly to Montreal. Then you will take a domestic flight. Then you will land in the Maritimes, okay? Go to Prince Edward Island, go to Nova Scotia, go to Newfoundland, go to New Brunswick. And what you do is that once you're in the maritime provinces, okay, you go to the local Department of Immigration and you give them $100,000 Canadian, that is 75,000 US, okay? You give them that $100,000 Canadian cash payment. You will get your green card the next day. I've seen so many Chinese people do this. Think about it. Right now, if you own a home in Beijing, right, or Shanghai, any of the tier 1 cities, okay, that's easily $1 million or $2 million. So when you sell it, paying $100,000 Canadian to Canada's Department of Immigration, that's nothing. And I'm really serious about this. Look at this. This is the number of immigrants that's currently coming to Canada. Right now, in these maritime provinces in Canada, they are actually receiving the highest number of immigrants per capita. And I can guarantee you a huge percentage of these are rich Chinese people who just sold their homes, who just made millions. So they're coming into maritime provinces, okay, and they're giving the Department of Immigration $100,000 Canadian, and literally within days, they will have their green card in Canada. This is why in Canada, there's a massive population explosion. Why haven't the politicians stepped in to do something about it? Well, it's very simple. Where do you think that $100,000 Canadian is going? Do you think that money is being injected back into the economy in order to build more homes? No. Do you think that money is going to contribute to the healthcare system, the education system, to fix our roads and to fix our bridges, to open up more factories? No. Where's that money going? To the pockets of the corrupt politicians, okay? You guys want to know something interesting? Almost every single member of parliament in maritime Canada, almost every single one of them It's a liberal. I'm serious. You can look up the liberal seats in the Member of Parliament in Canada. The Maritimes are dominated by liberals. The vast majority of these MPs are white people. You're sabotaging your own people. It's you who are doing this because of your own greed, okay? You guys want to know which neighborhood has the highest millionaires per capita anywhere in the world? You guys think it's Hong Kong, Singapore, Macau, Dubai? Is it Monaco, Luxembourg? No, it's the suburbs of Washington, D.C., in Fairfax County and Loudoun County. You guys want to get rich? Become a politician. You'll become a multimillionaire overnight. This process, by allowing these rich immigrants to come in, to basically just write a check to the government for 100,000 and just get your green card the next day. This is the dictionary definition of lobbying. And the neocons in Ottawa and in Washington, D.C., they love being lobbied by these rich Chinese immigrants. They don't give a shit about what happens to the 99% of Canadians who are struggling. For example, in the city of Vancouver, obviously everybody knew back in the 1980s and 1990s, okay, the crisis was going to get out of control because these planes coming from Guangzhou, from Shenzhen, from Hong Kong, okay, they're landing in Vancouver every single day, and hundreds of these Chinese tourists, they're hopping onto these buses and they're buying hundreds of brand new homes in Vancouver for free. Every single realtor knows that this is going to cause huge crisis. And remember, back in 1981, city of Vancouver was 93% white. That means that almost every single realtor in the city at the time was also white. They were the ones who sold out their own race, okay? They were the ones who given up on white people. They were the ones that sold their souls to these rich Chinese immigrants for money. The commissions these realtors made in Vancouver back in the 1980s and the 1990s during the peak of Vancouver's property boom. Just imagine the tens of millions of dollars they have made from all the commissions. So I will come back to elaborate on this topic in the future, but I just want to make something clear. I am being 100% transparent and honest about everything I said in this video. My dad, my mom, and my uncle, my aunts, okay? Everything I've said is true. None of them has ever had to pay for anything. This was a generational thing that used to happen, okay? Good things never last. And if you want to ask me, so my uncles and my aunts, they must have so much money, right? They got all of these properties, right? My dad must be loaded. My mom must be loaded. Well, almost every single member of my family, with a couple of exceptions, of course, almost every single one of them is completely broke now, okay? Many of them have gone into bankruptcy. Do you guys want to know what happened? This is what I mean, okay? The boomers and the Gen X, they had the greatest wealth transfer in history. However, they f***ed our world right into a coma. Okay, so they lost all of their wealth due to divorces, mainly contested divorces. Because in a contested divorce, do you know what happens? When a couple cannot reach a settlement on how to split their financial assets. Because when you have a family that's living together in one house under one roof, how do you split that? So basically, the government will come in. They say, okay, so you have a 3-bedroom condo. We're going to say that this is worth $400,000. We're going to take your house away from you. The husband then gets $200,000. The wife then gets $200,000. This is why divorces will lead to generational poverty. All the properties my mom purchased during her peak successful years, everything that was owned by my aunts and uncles, okay? They lost everything through contested divorce. And this is also a reason why throughout the entirety of human history, you're looking at what? 12,000 years of modern humans started back in Turkey, right? Somewhere 12,000 years ago. The Egyptian civilization has been around for what, 8,000 years? So the Chinese, the Greeks, and the Indians, they have been around for at least 5,000 years, okay? 5,000 years ago, divorce was never a thing. 500 years ago, divorce was never a thing. 60 years ago, divorce was never a thing. However, right now in China, the majority of marriages end in divorce, okay? And this is why you're seeing the severe consequences of what happens when couples break their marriage vows. The future of our world is looking more and more dystopian every single day. And to all the white people out there, I'm sorry. It's your local politicians, it's your local realtors, okay? You sold your souls to the devil. You sold your souls to the donors, to the lobbyists. You sold your souls to these rich Chinese immigrants. That's why Canada's housing market is 100% no. As long as these rich white realtors, they keep pocketing their millions. Why should they care about the 99% of Canadians who are struggling? This is why the white population is constantly dwindling, because the young white couples in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, they cannot afford to buy a home. And when you have a young couple that's living in a tiny studio apartment, they will not raise children. And here we have the collapse of the birth rate. This is the vicious cycle. Thank you guys for staying till the end. We'll see you guys next week.